Ezekiel's wheels covered in eyes. A man stood beside a river when the sky opened above him. A storm cloud moved toward him, filled with fire and blinding light. Inside the storm were 4 living creatures. Each creature had 4 faces. Each had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet shone like polished bronze. Beside them were enormous wheels intersecting other wheels. The wheels could move in any direction without turning, and their rims were covered with eyes. Above all of it was something like a throne. And above the throne was the appearance of a man surrounded by fire and rainbow-colored light. Ezekiel fell face down. This was not a dream about strange machinery. It was a vision of God's glory appearing in one of the last places Ezekiel expected to see it. And that may be the most important part of the entire story. Ezekiel was not standing inside the temple in Jerusalem. He was not worshiping in the center of his homeland. He was living in exile. The Babylonian Empire had invaded Judah and carried many people away from their homes. Ezekiel was among those displaced people. Everything familiar had been torn apart. Their city was threatened. Their future was uncertain. The temple, the place associated with God's presence, was far away. For many of the exiles, it may have felt like they had left God behind. Then Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 1 says, "The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God." Not in Jerusalem, not inside the temple, beside the river Chebar, in a foreign land. God met Ezekiel in exile. That is the first hope hidden beneath all the strange imagery. Ezekiel's world had collapsed, but heaven was not closed. The people had been displaced, but God had not lost their address. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4 says, "And I looked, and, behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself." The vision begins like an approaching storm. Fire flashes within the cloud. Brilliant light surrounds it. Then Ezekiel sees 4 living creatures emerging from the storm. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 5 says, "And this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man." But they are not ordinary human beings. Each has 4 faces. Ezekiel describes the face of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Their appearance combines intelligence, wild strength, patient power, and speed. They have 4 wings. 2 wings stretch upward and touch the wings of the creatures beside them. 2 cover their bodies. They move together. They do not wander. They go wherever the Spirit directs. Then Ezekiel notices something beside each creature. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 15 says, "Behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces." The construction is difficult to imagine. Ezekiel says each wheel appeared to have another wheel within it. This may describe intersecting wheels positioned at different angles, allowing movement in every direction. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 17 says, "When they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went." They do not need to turn around. They can move north, south, east, or west immediately. Nothing delays them. Nothing blocks them. Nothing forces the divine throne to make an awkward correction. Then comes the detail people remember most. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 18 says, "As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them." 4. The rims of the wheels are covered with eyes. It is strange, unsettling, almost impossible to picture without drifting into horror or science fiction. Some people have tried to read the vision as a description of extraterrestrial machinery, but that is not what Ezekiel says he is witnessing. This is prophetic symbolism connected to the glory and throne of God. The vision uses overwhelming imagery because Ezekiel is trying to describe something beyond ordinary experience. The eyes communicate awareness. Nothing is hidden. God sees every direction at once. No movement escapes his attention. No exile disappears beyond his knowledge. No empire operates outside his view. The wheels communicate movement. God's presence is not trapped inside one building. The throne can move. The glory of God is not chained to Jerusalem. That would have been a powerful message for people who believed losing their homeland meant losing access to God. The wheels move when the living creatures move. The creatures move when the Spirit directs. There is perfect coordination, no confusion, no hesitation, no panic. From Ezekiel's perspective, the world around him looked chaotic. Babylon had conquered nations. Kings were rising and falling. Families were being uprooted. But the vision showed him something deeper than the chaos. God was not reacting desperately to history. His throne was moving with purpose. Then Ezekiel looks above the creatures. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 22 describes something like a vast expanse, shining like crystal, stretched above their heads. Above that expanse is a throne resembling sapphire. And on the throne is what Ezekiel describes as the likeness as the appearance of a man. Fire and brightness surround him. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 28 says, "As the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud in the day of rain, so was the appearance of the brightness round about." The vision ends with the colors of a rainbow surrounding the throne. The storm, the fire, the creatures, the wheels, the eyes, all of it leads upward to the throne. The strangest details are not the center of the vision. God is. The creatures do not compete for attention. The wheels are not independent machines. The eyes are not watching for themselves. Everything supports the movement and revelation of divine glory. Ezekiel recognizes what he is seeing. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. He falls on his face. That language is careful. Ezekiel does not claim to have fully captured God. He describes an appearance of a likeness of the glory. He is reaching for human words to explain an encounter beyond human scale. The vision was overwhelming because Ezekiel needed to understand that the God calling him was greater than Babylon, greater than Jerusalem, greater than national collapse, greater than the limits of human imagination. And this is where Ezekiel's strange wheels become deeply personal. Many people experience a form of exile without leaving their country. A life can become unfamiliar while we are still standing in the same place. A marriage changes. A job disappears. A diagnosis rearranges the future. A family fractures. A plan we trusted collapses. Suddenly, we feel like foreigners inside our own lives. The landmarks are still there, but nothing feels like home. That is where God met Ezekiel. Not after the exile ended. Not after every question was answered. Not after Jerusalem was restored. God opened the heavens beside the river in Babylon. The message was not that exile was painless. The message was that exile was not godless. You can be far from what was familiar and still be seen. You can lose the structure you relied on without losing the presence of God. You can be surrounded by forces larger than yourself and still belong to a story they do not control. The eyes on the wheels say, nothing is overlooked. The movement of the wheels says, God is not stuck. The throne says, chaos is not sovereign. The rainbow says, judgment is not the only thing surrounding God's presence. There is also covenant, mercy, faithfulness, hope. The vision does not tell us exactly how every painful event will resolve. It does not make suffering simple. Ezekiel's ministry would be difficult. He would speak hard truths to people who often refused to listen. But before God gave Ezekiel his assignment, he showed him his glory. Because the prophet needed to know who was on the throne before facing what was happening on the earth. Maybe that is what some of us need too. Not a perfect explanation. Not a shallow promise that everything will immediately become easy. We need a larger vision of the one who is not confused by what confuses us. The world may turn without warning. Plans may collapse. Life may move in directions we cannot predict. But God is not trapped inside the version of life we lost. His presence can move into exile. His eyes can see through darkness. His throne does not wobble when nations shake. Ezekiel saw wheels within wheels, rims covered with eyes, living creatures moving like lightning, and a throne above them all. And the strangest vision in the Bible carried a simple message. You are not outside the reach of God. You are not unseen. You are not abandoned because your surroundings changed. The heavens can still open over unfamiliar ground, and even in exile, glory can find you.